Hi, my name is Mark Biernat, and I'm getting a PhD in economics, specifically monetary economics. And today I'm going to talk about the Great Debtpression. It's not a coincidence, or maybe it's just a coincidence, but the Great Depression was 1929 to, let's say, 1939. The Great Debtpression will be, perhaps, from 2029 to 2039. Corresponds with the baby boomers demanding and putting the most strain on the society in which we live in. The need for, obviously, benefits. So I'm calling this the Great Debtpression. And the date in which the U.S. can no longer service its debt, the interest payments, some speculate, is not 1933, 2033, which corresponds coincidentally with the depth of the Great Depression. How's that for a coincidence? Now, of course, I'm an optimist, and there's always a silver lining. And that silver lining is the debt to GDP ratio. The U.S. had the highest debt to GDP ratio in 2010. It was 134. Coming after the Great Recession. Currently, the debt to GDP ratio is down at 121. How did that happen? Well, it went further down, below 100, and then it went up, and now it's going down again, because the debt to GDP ratio, the ability for us to pay off our debt, is dependent on our growth. And this is why the Federal Reserve or the Office of Budget and Management, Congress, they cannot predict the time in which, the exact date in which we cannot service our debt. Too many exogenous variables, too many endogenous variables in the equation, and nobody can prognosticate with exact accuracy. Just for fun, I like to call this the Great Debtpression because it's a coincidence. It's 100 years after the Great Depression. And the depth of it, if you follow the current trajectory, could be 2033, which is 100 years after the Great Depression. But again, the good news is the debt to GDP is going down. Further good news is Japan has 262, I believe, for the debt to GDP ratio. The United States is the 21st wealthiest country per capita in the world, and Japan the 22nd. Life expectancies in Japan are some of the longest and the highest quality of life in Japan. In contrast, Russia has, I think in 2020, it was about 18%. Now it's probably 30% because they're a bad actor. But they have some of the shortest life expectancies in the whole world. I think you should look that up, what the male life expectancy in Russia is today, 2023. And what else? 10% of the population controls 40% of their wealth. So I would way rather live in these high debt to GDP ratio countries like the United States and Japan hasn't defaulted at 262. My point is, money is just a medium of exchange. These things are nominal numbers. When people say 33 trillion, they're trying to, invoke some sort of emotional response in you. I am fiscally conservative, fiscally frugal. I want to see a balanced budget amendment. Why can't we have a balanced budget amendment? I like to see competing currencies. I like to see a classical gold standard. I like to see all of these things all at once. But the moral of the story is we can grow out of our debt with something called the debt to GDP ratio. Potentially. I'm not saying we're going to do it. And technology and other factors besides just the debt determine our lifestyle and life expectancy and quality of life. I mean, look at this. Look at behind me. I'm preparing for the Great Debpression. I fixed my garden. I created this garden in my backyard. Not really. But that's how some people would like you to believe. that just because the debt to GDP ratio is through the roof, which it is, our standard of living will decline. But the data, just based on Japan and the United States compared to something like Russia, doesn't prove that out. It has to do with freedom, capitalism, how free a society is, how democratic a society is, how transparent a society is, how hardworking the people are. That's what determines wealth of nations. That's what Adam Smith said, and that's what many after Adam Smith said. It's the real economy. The monetary economy, it can crowd out private investment and create a drag or an anchor. So maybe we're not living to our full potential. But it's not going to create a decline or a catastrophic default in the United States in the foreseeable future. We have serious issues we need to address. I trust in our democracy. And as we get closer to that point, I think measures will be taken. What is the cause, the underlying cause of this? If you ask me, it's oil. It's fossil fuels. Because fossil fuels empower countries that shouldn't be empowered. They're not connected to real growth, productivity, and creativity. They're connected to just simply being lucky to have real estate that sits on a pile of oil or natural gas. This creates bad actors, concentration of wealth. So the free democratic world has to create a defense industry. And when the bad actors are converted to democracy, freedom, and transparency, the defense industry will shrink and we'll have a tremendous peace dividend. And then we can seriously address the debt to GDP ratio. And as we transfer and convert to green energies like solar, and could be argued either way, but nuclear power, nuclear fusion, wind, alternative energies, this will take the power away from those countries that have the resource curse and a concentration of wealth. And that will hopefully reduce our need for the defense industry, which is perhaps our largest item on the budget. So you naysayers that think I don't know what I'm talking about, I do. I'm getting a PhD in economics. It's very simple. The debt to GDP ratio can put a drag on the economy like we see in certain countries like in the Mediterranean. But it is not necessarily to be equated with standard of life. And we don't need to worry about the Great Debtpression until we get rid of our dependence on these fossil fuels and we convert the bad actors or help the bad actors in the world become free and transparent democracies. Thank you very much.